Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you've had a great week. I hope that you get to sit down, relax, and enjoy this video. I talk a lot on this channel about advice for helping dungeon masters to plan their game and to prep their game, but without a dungeon master, you won't have a story. However, that can be said exactly the same with the players. Without your players, you're not going to have a story. This video is for the players. Recently in my own campaign I've had a few player deaths. It has been quite an upsetting time, as several characters that have been known and loved have perished. It's been quite an emotional experience for the players. We've had a return to Barovia and to the Amber Temple, which is something I would love to make a video on how I ran the Amber Temple. But going through all of that, I sort of realised that I've seen a lot of different player characters come and go, some that have stayed, and the best ones, the ones that are the most impactful, are always the player characters who are sort of focused on and understand the game, understand their backstory, and understand how they fit into the world. So I wanted to do a video sort of explaining how I recommend players build a character. Hopefully you find this to be really useful. Hopefully out of this video you learn you're able to build a player character that you are so happy with. And this can be used by DMs as well to craft really versatile NPCs, but this is going to be hyper focused for the players. So the first things first, where to start. I don't think it's any surprise you start with the player's handbook. These are the rules as a player that you should know. Having a copy of this at your table is going to be invaluable. I highly recommend you pick up this book. There is no substitute for it. This book is going to cover basically everything that you're going to need to know, from races to classes, to advice on your backstory, to the rules that you need to know as a character. This is going to be your Bible as a player. Without this book, you are going to be in an awkward situation. The most valuable pieces of information in this book when it comes to creating a character is not the races, it is not the class you pick. Although new players will often make the mistake of thinking that if I pick a cool class and a cool race, my character will be amazing. It's not true at all. Loads of players, and for some reason, especially new players, when they get this book for the first time, they immediately deviate away from the human race and they try something completely weird and bizarre and out there. They pick a class that isn't necessarily relating to their play style, but is more aimed towards being a sort of rip-off of something that they've seen. For example, I think a few DMs out there have probably seen the occasional player trying to play Batman or play Sherlock Holmes in D&D, and it works sort of well, but not really, because the players are trying to recreate something that isn't their playstyle. Oops. When you are running a game of D&D, when you are in a game, you are role-playing. And the easiest way to role-play is to role-play a piece of your personality. Only a sliver, only a small piece, but something that you can latch onto and ramp up to 100. For example, I've had players who are in real life very shy, and they might pick that one sliver of their personality that is brave or heroic or really bossy, and they'll ramp that up to 100, and that becomes their character's personality. It is the complete opposite to their own. However, you can tell the players who are trying to... I've had a player trying to play a Strider from The Lord of the Rings, and it just didn't work. He ended up isolating himself from the group, and every game that he was in, I think he had a bad time, and I think the players just were sick of him not being a part of the team. So those kinds of characters don't work. I highly recommend, if you have an idea for a character that is based on a TV show, a movie, a book, kind of put that to one side and just think what you would like to make. Don't base it on something that you've seen, for example. The best way that I think you can make a character and start to flesh out a character's personality is through the ideals and bonds. The first page I think you should pick when making a character is the background page, the backstory information. Pick your backstory. For example, let's just say your character is a criminal. Okay? They're a criminal. Criminal society, so we get some information, some features of the criminal. And then we look at our ideals, our bonds. You know, for example, redemption. Maybe our character is a criminal, but that's not the life that they chose. This right here is just a small sentence of text, a small sliver of information that we can use to build our characters up. So that's what we're going to do. Turn to this page first, pick a backstory that sort of appeals to you without having any preconceptions. And think to yourself, okay, well, you can randomly roll it or you can read it. The redemption one speaks to me, so a criminal that doesn't really want to be a criminal, they want to do good, maybe sort of like a Robin Hood kind of character. They have a bond, random number 4. I will become the greatest thief that ever lived. Okay, so they don't want to stop being a thief, but they have a good sort of personality behind them. So again, this Robin Hood kind of character sort of seems to be developing here. And then personality trait, we'll go 5. I'm incredibly slow to trust. Those who seem the fairest often have the most to hide. So somebody who doesn't trust individuals. Maybe we're kind of looking at a criminal who is trying to pay off a debt. Maybe trying to do the right thing. But often has their character shrouded in mystery. Good at heart, but their actions on the surface are quite aggressive and quite criminal. Quite horrible. But they're for a good purpose. So already we've got an understanding of the character that we want to make. And from our background, we can easily select our class. Well, I might want to be a rogue. If I'm going to be a thief, the personality trait, I want to be the greatest thief that ever lived. I'm probably going to want to pick a rogue. And I probably want to go down the thief line. And then when it comes to picking a race, well, then that doesn't really affect us in this situation. Maybe I want to go for a human. Something quite simple, something quite basic. Maybe a halfling is going to be a much easier race to pick. It's going to give me some advantages on my quest. When it comes to picking your character, players will often pick the race and the class first instead of their backstory. Your backstory is the most important thing. If you are true to your backstory, if you remember nothing else from this video, this is something I recommend. If you are true to your backstory, you are true to the character. You will have a better game. You will have a better time. It's easier to roleplay once you have the backstory. Don't come up with your backstory after. Come up with it first. So, on the thought process of backstory, what do I recommend? It's this book right here. You saw in the beginning. The Ultimate RPG Character Backstory Guide. This is a bit of fun. It's not something I recommend you take too seriously. But if you are a player who really struggles to think about their character's backstory and their past, this is going to be really useful. So, for example, this is going to help you isolate those parts of the character's personality that you may not necessarily think about. This is a really good page just to start talking about anger. On this page, we're looking at different emotions that the character might have and how do they react in certain situations. If your character is angry, What form does that take? Violence against people, violence against objects, saying unforgivable things, threats. Your character might react to an angry situation in a different way. So have a look at something like this and think about it. Same with despair. Are they silent? Are they destructive? Do they voice dark thoughts? Do they cry? How do they grieve? Bargaining. This book gives you a lot of different stuff to help craft a character's personality. Having something like this, having even a few pages filled out in this book, is quite useful when it comes to crafting a character's backstory. So this is something I recommend, and it actually goes through, just to give you a look. I don't recommend anyone purchases anything that I haven't purchased myself. I think that's a pretty lame thing to do. It talks about the beginnings from characters level 1 to 7, all the way up to 20. So these are the things that, as you move along, your character's backstory should change. One thing that players will often try to do is they'll try to come up with all of their backstory in one go. Don't do that. That's not going to work. Come up with your backstory in little chunks. First of all, you don't need to think about, your character's parents, your character's wife, your character's secret love interest when they were 5. It doesn't matter. What you need to think about when you first craft a character is why they are there. Why they are in this world, why they are doing this thing. Then think about their personality. The big question when coming up with a character is why. Why are they acting or doing a certain thing? When you have that, then you can begin to craft the story around them. And there's nothing wrong. There is no rule saying that you cannot. Message your DM, have a conversation with your DM, go out for a meal and discuss it. Talk with them about adding things to your backstory. That can be added at any point. I've had players who've run games with me for about 2 years, and we are still adding to their backstory, because that is what is needed in the game. The final thing I recommend for players to do, you've come up with a character's past, you've come up with a character's class, and you've basically, around their backstory, you've crafted their race and class. Not the other way around. You haven't come up with their class and then created their backstory. You've come up with their backstory and then created their class. So you've gone through that process. You've thought about how your character will behave in certain situations. The sort of personality tweaks. You might have even come up with a voice for your character to have, a way of speaking. Maybe you've got some story twists in there that you're going to reveal to your other players a little bit later down the line. Maybe you're actually working for a criminal overlord, and this is something that you've kept entirely secret until the right moment, until you trust your allies a bit more. The next thing that you need to do is to place your character within the world. Your DM might have a different campaign setting. This is the campaign setting for the Forgotten Realms, for the Sword Coast in particular. If your character is from the Sword Coast, it is a very good idea to familiarise yourself with this area. Learn what it's like. What is the High Moor? What is there? What is this forest, the High Forest? What is it all about? How big is this area? How long is it going to take to travel from one to another? Get used to where your character is from and what they're doing. Is your character from Waterdeep? Is your character from Baldur's Gate? Where are they from? Where did they originate? Think about it and sort of position your character within that world. Once you have your character's backstory, it's time to start sprinkling some campaign setting specific information. When you've done that, you are ready to go. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit long. I did want to keep this one a little bit shorter, but there's just so much to cover when it comes to crafting a character's backstory that it's really difficult to limit it down. I hope the main beats of this video are useful to you guys. Come up with your character's backstory. Be inspired by your own personality, not by something you might have seen on TV. Be creative with it. Be enjoyable with it. Come up with a character that you love, that has depth. Use resources that are out there to make that process easier. Guys, have a great day. Thank you very much for watching.